Okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Awesome. All right. So, welcome to our fall conservation policy update and advocacy workshop. We have a biannual opportunity to check in and engage on conservation issues, get updates on what's going on, meet some of your fellow conservation-minded mountaineers. And this is our fall um, webinar. It's coming at a very important time, important year for public lands. And so we're really glad that you're joining us. Just some housekeeping to get us started. This is an hour long. We're going to have probably 15-20 minutes at the end for your questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go along. We'll answer those first, and then we'll have an opportunity, since we're a small group today, to share your questions verbally. And in the meantime, if you want to keep your video off and eat your lunch, that's fine. If you want to keep your video on, that's great too, up to you. So again, thanks for joining us. My name is Betsy Robley. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Conservation and Advocacy Director here for the Mountaineers. I've been on staff for just over 5 years and love the opportunity to advocate for public lands on behalf of the Mountaineers community and engage with you all. And joining me today is Connor Marshall, who is our Advocacy and Engagement Manager. You'll hear from him a little bit later. It's also his 40th birthday today, so everyone give a big happy birthday to Connor. And we also have Livy Bright, who is our Policy and Planning Associate Manager. Livy joined us just a few months ago, so she's probably a new face to most of you. We'd love for you to share your name and your branch in the chat, so you can kind of see who's here and say hi to each other. So if you'd like to do that, feel free. So what we'll cover today is kind of, again, an opportunity to bring you all together, hear the latest conservation policy updates, opportunities to take action, and then offer a chance to get your questions answered. So we'll start with just a brief overview of the Mountaineers Advocacy for Public Lands. For those of you who are maybe tuning in to one of these for the first time, might not be quite as familiar with what we do here at the Mountaineers. We're going to first start with a very pressing issue for public lands, which is the status of the federal government shutdown, impacts that we're seeing out there. We're going to give a trip report on our October DC advocacy trip, which Connor and I flew out to DC for, and a couple of other folks on this call, Daniel and Amy. Will be, just a heads up, asking the two of you to share a little bit about your experiences as well. And then also giving some policy updates on a few other conservation issues that are going on right now, and then end with a Q&A. So before we get started, we wanted to begin with a land acknowledgement. So it's important, and we at the Mountaineers think about this a lot, to acknowledge that the landscapes that we love to experience through recreation and that we advocate for through our policy and advocacy work are the traditional homelands of Native peoples. This beautiful forested landscape pictured here is the Dungeness River Valley on the Olympic Peninsula. And it's an example of a roadless area in a national forest that we've defended this year, both from public land sell-offs and also to fight to protect the roadless rule, which is proposed to be rescinded by the current administration. And we don't just do this for the Great Backcountry recreation, but also to support the tribal rights and cultural lifeways of Washington's tribe. And we are grateful here at the Mountaineers for the continued stewardship and advocacy by tribes today to protect our shared home. So just wanted to begin with that. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Connor to talk about the Mountaineers advocacy.
Great. Thanks, Betsy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So the Mountaineers is uniquely positioned to have an outsized advocacy impact. So why advocacy at the Mountaineers? So at the Mountaineers, we adventure with purpose. We have a long history of involvement in conservation and advocacy kind of through the decades of our community. And that's advocacy for the lands that we love to experience. And we really have been an effective voice for public lands throughout the years. And so in terms of what we advocate for, we advocate to protect public lands and the outdoor experience. The 4 buckets of our advocacy agenda are landscape conservation, public lands funding, sustainable, equitable outdoor access, and climate action. So and the issues that we'll update you all on today, share updates from the year of our advocacy work on behalf of our community, really cut across all 4 of these areas for the most part. So how we advocate, what our advocacy looks like. So direct advocacy on behalf of our community through relationship building with lawmakers and land managers, policy letters, testifying before committees in Congress, also state level advocacy, but we're primarily focused on federal advocacy here today. Testifying on issues that we're advocating for, and we also work a lot through coalitions and work with partners to do this advocacy work. So there's also the grassroots advocacy component. So we encourage and activate our members of our community to use their own voice and passion for the outdoors through advocacy. And what that looks like is primarily taking action alerts, advocacy actions that we send out, or in the case of Amy and Danielle, joining us in DC to do that direct advocacy. And we're always focused looking at more ways to activate our members through that direct advocacy. But so those are the 2 aspects of what that advocacy looks like. We prioritize federal advocacy because 60% of Mountaineers programs take place on federal land, and then on down, we also have programs on state land, so we engage at the state level as well. And we're effective because our community and individuals in our community have that authentic voice as outdoor leaders and educators, local connections through your outdoor experiences, and really seeing impacts on the ground add so much value to the advocacy that we share on your behalf, and that the advocacy that you share directly through those advocacy actions, and again for public lands and recreation. So where you come in, like I said, there's no replacement for constituent advocacy. Washington's congressional delegation knows how important the outdoors are to their constituents, to you all, and your advocacy helps elevate our issues, helps create a feedback loop with their offices. So and really spurs members to take action and their staff to take action on our behalf. So on the next slide, what that's looked like this year, defending public lands this year. We've seen a constant wave of attacks on federal public lands from Congress and the administration. These include federal agency workforce reductions, public land sell-offs, which we'll get into those issues, as well as a rollback to the roadless rule that's begun, and threats to bedrock conservation laws like NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, which is really important for protecting public involvement in federal agency decisions. So we're engaging deeply through partnerships to defend public lands this year, and we've made progress, but the threats keep coming. And one of the roles that we played along with Outdoor Alliance Washington, which we'll share more about, the Outdoor Alliance Washington network, is really collecting impact stories and sharing them with lawmakers and land managers. And these stories make their way into committee hearings, into member-driven communications. One example is Senator Patty Murray's office, that they produced a report on the federal land manager staffing impacts in Washington. And so we mobilized our community to speak up, to defend public lands this year. And we really just thank you for taking action in record numbers. Really appreciate all you do to be on this advocacy journey with us. Public land sell-offs, on that issue, we generated 10,000 messages to Congress, which is the most that I've seen on one of our advocacy actions in my 4 years on staff. And the roadless rule public comment period, we generated more than 1,300 public comments with a high degree of personalization, around 25%. So while we're responding to the top threats to defend public lands, we're also seeking proactive opportunities to secure investments in the outdoors. And one example is the Legacy Restoration Fund reauthorization, which we'll talk more about. So on the next slide, Just wanted to break up the talking at you and also get a sense of how you've been advocating this year. So we have an opening poll question. What conservation policy issue have you been tracking or engaging or advocating for the most this year? Agency staffing, workforce reductions, or public lands funding, public land sell-offs, the roadless rule, or something else. So we're going to launch a live poll here and we'd love your participation in that. Right. Still see some answers coming in. Give a few more seconds here. Right, I'm seeing 90% participated, so we can go ahead and end that. And Olivia, see if you can share the result of that. Yeah, cool. Great. Yeah, so we're seeing agency staffing is kind of the big leader there, public land sell-off and second, but yeah, some good just distribution across those issues, all important issues that we're seeing this year. So thanks for sharing that with us. So next slide. Cool. Stop sharing. Did we already share results?
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Okay. So next issue wanted to share a little about is the government shutdown. So sharing some updates and impacts. So the partial government shutdown has lasted more than a month. Many agency staff are furloughed. That means that staff that there's less on the ground staff supporting conservation and recreation on these federal public lands, primarily national parks and national forests. Well, when we think about Washington's public lands have largely remained open with reduced services and staffing. There's been little progress in terms of action in Congress made on ending the shutdown, but it could wind down later this month. We heard mixed reflections on that, kind of prognostications of when the shutdown might end. When we were in DC recently, Betsy will speak more to our DC trip report, but one impact from the shutdown was that agency staff weren't available to take our meetings and engage with us when we were in DC. But we've been encouraging our community to recreate responsibly as always and consider avoiding national parks and other public lands during the shutdown that typically benefit from a higher staffing presence. So thank you all for doing that. And we're still collecting recreation impacts. We'll share later. There's a survey that we still have live. So if you're seeing things out on the ground, we'd love to hear that. So now I'll toss it back to Betsy to share our DC trip report.
All right. So we at the Mountaineers go to DC about once a year, and we take the opportunity to go with our Outdoor Alliance partners. And so we're joining folks from around the country who represent other human-powered outdoor recreation pursuits like mountain bikers and surfers and hikers and paddlers. And we all advocate together so that our voice is more powerful than just, the Mountaineers showing up by ourselves. And so this year our trip came at an interesting time with the government shutdown going on. And as Connor mentioned, that meant that not a lot of congressional members were in DC, and we weren't able to meet with the federal land managers. But regardless, we took advantage of a quieter capital, and we had about 43 folks from around the country coming out, and we did 75 meetings collectively. We actually did about half with Republicans and half with Democrats, so a pretty even split. For Washington State, this is our awesome Washington crew, and we had 10 folks come out from Washington. Connor and I from the Mountaineers, we also had our other Outdoor Alliance Washington partners of Surfrider Foundation and Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance. American Whitewater, and then this year we also had 5 folks from Outdoor Alliance's Grasstops Collective. And that is an advocacy training program for local advocates from around the country. And we've been lucky to have 2 Mountaineers members join. Danielle Graham was a member of the first cohort of the Grasstops Collective last year, and Amy Kohler joined for the second Grasstops Collective cohort this year. So Amy and Danielle, I see you on this. So heads up, I'm gonna ask you to share a little bit about your experience. So fair warning. And it was great to have those folks with us, folks that, you know, have day jobs, do other things, but are coming to share their personal stories, and their passion for outdoor recreation was really, really powerful. And I'll share a little bit about kind of what we heard, and then I'd love to invite Danielle and Amy to share their experiences. But I think what we heard was strong support for our issues. The members of Washington's congressional delegation are, by and large, really strong supporters of public lands. This photo is with Senator Murray. We spent about 15 minutes with her, talking with her. And she's just one of our great champions. You may ask, you know, what's the good of going to DC and meeting with folks that agree with us on these issues? And the answer is, you know, these representatives have so many issues that they need to prioritize, that we need to, you know, put our issues on the table and make sure that they know that their constituents care about public lands and conservation and recreation, and raise those issues with them so that those issues are on the table for them to take action on and care about, as well as other important issues like healthcare and foreign affairs, and you name it. So we had a great opportunity to build relationships in person with congressional staff, who are really the ones that get things done. We were able to elevate constituent stories, and we had some folks who run a local trails organization in the Methow Valley of Washington, and Alan was able to share you know, specific anecdotes of the number of Forest Service staff that have the Methow Ranger District has lost, and what the specific impacts of that has been. And so that information is really valuable whenever we shared a local impact story of what reduced staffing, reduced funding means on the ground. You could see staffers take their pen out and take some notes. We were able to gather some key intelligence that will help our advocacy. One thing we learned is that public land sales are unfortunately not dead. They are still on the table, and we could see that crop up at some point. And we also saw glimmers of bipartisanship and potential opportunities for folks from both sides of the aisle to take action on issues like reauthorizing the Legacy Restoration Fund of the Great American Outdoors Act, which is funding for deferred maintenance for projects on public lands. And that could be an opportunity to pass bipartisan legislation. We also, I think when you talk to folks in person, you're able to hear that you have more in common than you think. And that's what a lot of our Outdoor Alliance partners from other states who are meeting with more members who are maybe not primed as much as our Washington delegation to support public lands. So that's always good to hear. I think, you know, sitting in a spot where you're reading news online, it may seem more polarized than it actually is. And so speaking from, you know, in-person experience of meeting with some of these offices, I think that was good to hear. And then finally, you know, the benefit of these sorts of opportunities are we're joining with national partners, we're talking about national level issues, but we're also elevating our Mountaineers specific issues at a national scale. So an example of that is we talked about implementation of the Explore Act, which was the big recreation package that passed last year. And we talked about how the Mountaineers are seeing that the permitting improvements are being implemented or not being implemented. And that's an issue that's really important to our community that we're able to bring directly to offices. So Amy, Danielle, want to pipe in with any of your reflections on what advocating in DC was like?
Danielle, do you want to go first or do you want me?
Go for it, Amy.
Okay, that's a risky move. Thanks, Betsy. So I'll try to keep it short, but I think just kind of reiterate some of the points already made. I am one of those people who has a day job and who's at it currently and does not, had never been to DC before. I use the Grasshoppers Collective as an avenue to learn about advocacy and how to become more effective in advocacy with the time I have to do it. So, I think obviously Washington we have a lot of support for public lands. Senator Cantwell, is the prime sponsor for the Roadless Area Conservation Act, and Senator Patty Murray has always been a consummate supporter. But I think there's still, I guess for me, the big takeaways is like there's so much to do, regardless of your representative or senator's perceived position, for a few reasons. One, they do have staffers, but there are so many issues, as we all know, going on every single day, that to have folks on the ground in their communities coming to them and saying, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what me as a constituent is getting impacted by, their eyes light up, they're taking notes, they want to know. And it's especially impactful if you are a constituent. I went to Representative Smith, my representative's office, and coming in and saying I'm your constituent means something to our representatives and our senators, and it's a really powerful tool that I would encourage everyone to lean into. Again, even if you are like, oh, my representative loves public lands, like going and saying I'm a constituent, this is what I'm seeing, they take notice and they appreciate the information you're giving them, and they're looking for partnership with folks on the ground. So I think I just want to double down that like there's so much opportunity. Even in this room, there's 30 people. Like the amount of experiences folks have here in Washington and beyond about what's happening with agency capacity, what's happening, what things they love from the roadless rule, like iCanyon. And a lot of folks in DC don't know about canyons, right? And that makes sense. And being like, hey, Washington has so many great canyons that are impacted by XYZ, gives them, they were grateful for that information, is how I'll put it. And then I think I will note that it is very much more of a partnership, seeing folks like Connor Betsy, Tom O'Keefe from American Whitewater, Pierce Gilquist from Surfrider, who've built relationships with our representatives. There's a starting point here, right? So there's a chance to build relationships with people that can help impact policy, co-sponsor bills you want, and you can build on that over time. And seeing the trust that some of our senators and representatives have built with members of the community who've been long-lasting showed for me the power of those relationships, and how there's a lot of opportunity to become someone that your representatives who are working for you can partner with to seek opinion, advice, what will impact the community more and outsize you or your organization's impact on public lands in your state. So I will stop there because I could keep talking, but those were kind of my high-level insights, at least from the dynamics of going to DC and communicating with my representatives and with Senator Patty Murray and Cantwell's staff and themselves. Danielle, I'll pass it to you.
I think Amy did a great job of covering that. I think what she shared about the relationship building very much resonates with me. And the one thing that I would add is, the reason many of us are mountaineers are to find community in the activities that we do. It's the conversations we have on the trail or the people we meet in courses. And when things have felt really gloomy this year, it's nice to feel part of a conservation community, like we're doing right now. A big one going to Washington, D.C., and just all getting together over the internet to send action alerts and things like that. So that's been a great filling my bucket up this year.
Great, thanks to both of you. And thanks so much for devoting so much of your time, not just to the Mountaineers, but to advocacy, to the Grasstops Collective as well. And I think we have another birthday in the room, Amy. Happy birthday, Amy.
Thanks. Had to join to celebrate Connor and my birthday together.
We'll drop the link to the information about the Grasstops Collective in the chat. So if folks are interested, the application for the next cohort of the Grasstops Collective is open. It's definitely a commitment, but it's a great opportunity if you're looking to get more involved in advocacy, learn how to do what we're talking about, having meetings with members of Congress and meet some other folks from around the country. So, and if you're like, that sounds great, but I don't have time to do a 6-month training and fly to DC, that's okay. There's other opportunities to take action and maybe go down to Olympia instead of DC, and we'll drop our conservation email to the chat as well to reach out to us directly, and we can kind of talk to you about what the right opportunity is for your interest and time commitment. So
let's see, before we move on, I'm seeing one question in the chat from David Frey about, are there tribal governments or organizations involved with Outdoor Alliance?
With Outdoor Alliance, there aren't, but Outdoor Alliance Washington is really active and as far as engaging with our local tribes here in Washington, and we try to do that as much as we can given local tribal capacity, and so that's a big part of our work here in Washington. So switching gears to talk about, we're going to run through some current conservation and advocacy issues. And the first one we're going to cover here is the large scale cuts to staff at federal land management agencies like the Forest Service and the Park Service. I think that was the #1 issue that you folks are tracking that you shared in the poll. And that was the focus of a webinar that we did earlier this year in the spring. We shared at that time a little bit about what we were seeing, and that unfortunately still remains the case. The National Park Service has lost about 25% of its staff nationally. The Forest Service has also lost about 25% of its non-fire staff. Here in Washington, some of our national forests and ranger districts have lost between 40 to 70% of their staff. And so that includes seasonal employees that weren't hired this year. That includes folks that have received the probationary employee firing, as well as folks who chose to resign early. Kind of what's new since we've talked about this in our webinar and in our blogs is a couple things. One is, you might have seen on the news that that the Department of the Interior is proposing a reduction in force. And what that means is a large scale layoff of staff. They revealed through court documents that they plan to reduce staff by about 2,000 employees at the department, and that means nearly 300 at the Park Service, which is part of the Department of the Interior. That is not necessarily targeting individual national park units, but will probably target the regional offices as well as the Denver Service Center of the Park Service. Importantly for us, the Denver Service Center is the one that writes the visitor use management plans. And so Mount Rainier Timed Entry came out of a visitor use management analysis. North Cascades is doing a visitor use management plan right now to more sustainably manage increased visitation to the North Cascades. So we shared a blog about how you can comment on that and get involved. So that planning capacity is really important because the individual national park units don't don't necessarily have that capacity in-house, and they rely on this Denver Service Center to do that work. And so that's something that we'll keep an eye on. And the court temporarily barred the administration from issuing those reduction in force notices to unionize employees during the shutdown. And so we could be seeing this after the government reopens. The other new thing that's going on is the Forest Service, as part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is proposed for a reorganization. They are proposing to eliminate the regional offices of the Forest Service. And what concerns us about that is that regional offices play important roles in coordinating trail projects in the state. They help provide technical expertise on special use permitting, which is particularly important to the mountaineers. They're also consolidating or eliminating the research arms of the Forest Service. So important research on climate resiliency, forest health. That is all research that's very specific to our region. And so if that is consolidated elsewhere in the country, they might not be doing as much local research. So we shared a letter to the Forest Service with our concerns about that reorganization proposal. We haven't seen that proposal finalized yet, or really the next step at all. So we'll be closely monitoring that. And then as far as how you can help, as Connor mentioned, lawmakers find our local impact stories really valuable. So, for example, many of you probably saw the Seattle Times article on conditions in the enchantments over the summer when they went from 11 wilderness rangers to 1. If you're seeing effects in the enchantments, similar effects on public lands this summer, as far as like this trail is usually really well maintained and it wasn't this year, this bathroom was in really bad condition, or this garbage was overflowing, that's important to share. So we have a way to capture those stories so we can share them directly with lawmakers. And you can find that it's just a simple Google form survey, and you can access that through that QR code. The next step as far as our advocacy is once Congress opens the government again, we're asking them to pass full year appropriations bills. Appropriation is like the word for government funding. But we are asking them to for Congress to assert more of its power of the purse, its role in determining how the administration distributes funding. And we'll be sending out a blog and action alert about this once the government reopens and things start happening again. But we'll be encouraging the lawmakers to pass the Senate bill, which is stronger than the House bill, but both of those bills are better than the administration's budget, and both would be better than kind of the situation that we're in now. So that's how you can help right now, but keep an eye out in our Conservation Currents newsletter for the latest on this in the next few months. Back to Connor.
All right. Thanks, Betsy. So recapping public land sell-offs. So you all mentioned it was one of the issues that you've been engaging on this year. So as you know, the outdoor community helped defeat a proposal to sell off millions of acres of public lands through budget reconciliation. So we just want to again thank you all for taking action with us. Your advocacy led to a strong opposition to the sell-offs proposal and to support for public lands across the Washington delegation, which included critical support from Representative Dan Newhouse from Central Washington's 4th District. He really came out publicly in a very public way to oppose the sell-offs, and we were just so pleased to see that. It's an example of that constituent advocacy being so important. His office was hearing from so many members of his community from different aspects of the outdoor community, including from Mountaineers members and also the engagement we've been doing through Outdoor Alliance Washington with his office certainly played a role as well. So just wanted to again share that. And I think I mentioned this before, but our advocacy action generated 10,000 messages to Congress on that issue. Sell-off attempts may return to Congress in some form. We were kind of hearing some reflections on that, what that might look like on our recent DC trip. We heard that Senator Mike Lee isn't dropping the issue. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, he's not moving away from the idea and is strategizing new approaches. So the sell-offs attempt might look a little different this time around, but we're certainly tracking that through Outdoor Alliance National. And to prepare for future sell-off attempts, we're supporting efforts to build that bipartisan support that Betsy mentioned that we saw for public lands in DC. Including continued engagement with the 2 Republican offices in Washington, Representative Newhouse and Representative Baumgardner. And Outdoor Alliance nationally is also focused on some initiatives. There's a Congressional Public Lands Caucus now, and a bill called the Public Lands and Public Hands Act, which would put some guardrails and some limits to similar sell-off attempt through budget reconciliation. So there's bipartisan support building for those initiatives. We thankfully don't have any current advocacy action on the sell-offs issue right now, but we'll keep you updated as things develop, and certainly something that we'll come back to and generate grassroots support. So appreciate your engagement on that issue. Heading to the next slide and jumping into the roadless rule. So obviously is one of the big topics this year. So the administrative rollback of the roadless rule has begun. The roadless rule protects millions of acres of national forests from unnecessary road building and resource extraction. When we talk about the roadless footprint in Washington, we're talking about 2 million acres of roadless areas that support our backcountry recreation in Washington would be put at risk if the roadless rule is rescinded. Just rescinding the roadless rule wouldn't mandate any development or extraction, but it would leave those lands open and vulnerable to that. So the roadless rule is critical for recreation and conservation, and really strikes a balance between many uses. So we sent an organizational comment letter as a part of the notice of intent to roll back the roadless rule to the Forest Service, and then our community generated more than 1,300 public comments, again with that high degree of personalization. So that was really great to see. In terms of next steps or where we go from here, we expect to see a draft environmental impact statement to be released as early as the winter of next year, and public comments a little open-ended because of changes to NEPA, but we are hoping for additional public comment opportunities, and we'll definitely keep you all abreast of those opportunities. But in the meantime, there's another way that you can show support for the roadless rule. Going to the next slide. So there's a Roadless Area Conservation Act, which was introduced in Congress, has great support. 9 of the 12 members of the Washington delegation are signed on to that. So wanted to just amplify that advocacy action opportunity. Again, you could scan the QR code here. Livy put the link to the action alert in the chat. If the members already sponsored, it's basically just thanking them for supporting permanent protections for wilderness. For roadless areas through the legislation. So that's an action that you could take now. But again, big issue for the outdoor community this year, and certainly one that we haven't heard the last of, and will be a theme for next year as well. So thanks for your advocacy. So on to the next slide. So with a little bit of good news now, and kind of proactive approach to advocacy, wanted to talk about the Legacy Restoration Fund and the great impact that the Great American Outdoors Act has had in Washington. So the Legacy Restoration Fund infused more than $270 million across 38 projects to restore and maintain federal public lands of Washington. So these are projects that you're probably familiar with. There were several in the Snoqualmie Pass area. So the Denny Creek, Franklin Falls, Parking Lot and Trailhead, Annette Lake, Snow Lake, just to name a few projects, and really want to call out one of the ways that the recreation community has been a part of the Great American Outdoors Act story, Legacy Restoration Fund story, and that's through supporting projects on the ground. So nonprofit partners like Washington Trails Association, Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, and Mountains to Sound Greenway have collaborated with federal land managers around those projects, implementing those projects. And so the photo here is Outdoor Alliance Washington partners with Representative Kim Schreier at a little event when they finished that project ribbon cutting for the parking lot at Franklin Falls near Snoqualmie Pass. So funding for the Legacy Restoration Fund lapsed at the end of September. So it's currently not reauthorized, and land managers need this critical funding, need additional critical funding to help address the $41 billion maintenance backlog on federal public lands nationwide. It wouldn't solve the funding and the staffing crisis at the agencies, but it really would be give them this important dedicated funding to keep this great work going, both in Washington and nationally. So we're advocating to reauthorize the Legacy Restoration Fund. And on the next slide, we have a advocacy action. So there's a bill in Congress called the America the Beautiful Act. And it's in the Senate right now. There's not currently a House version. We're hearing that a House version may be coming, and so we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, through this advocacy action, either scanning the QR code or clicking on the link in the chat, you can thank both Washington senators encourage Washington's two senators to sign on to the legislation and share your support. And again, personalization is the name of the game here. If you have any stories about recreating on projects on public lands that have been improved through the Legacy Restoration Fund, that's a great thing to add when you complete the advocacy action. So that's it on this issue.
All right, just like the last update for you all is an update on the Northwest Forest Plan amendment process. And so Northwest forests are vulnerable with climate change, with wildfires, increasing wildfires, with threats to our old growth forests, with the interest with the current administration in increased logging. And one way that we can really help protect some of our magnificent forests, national forests, is through updating the Northwest Forest Plan, which governs management on national forests in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. I served on the Northwest Forest Plan Federal Advisory Committee, which advised the Forest Service on how to update that plan. And what came out of that process is a Forest Service process to amend the Northwest Forest Plan. The Forest Service released a draft environmental impact statement earlier this year, late last year, to revise that plan that was heavily influenced by the Federal Advisory Committee's recommendations. We submitted public comments with Outdoor Alliance on that plan, and also encouraged our members to submit their individual comments. We received the disconcerting news that the Forest Service will not be finalizing that environmental impact statement based on the comments they receive. Instead, they will be drafting a revised environmental impact statement to reflect the current administration's priorities. And so what that can mean is an increased focus on timber production versus conservation. So needless to say, we will be watching this process closely, and we'll keep folks updated on what we hear from the administration on how they're going to do this and what the opportunity for the public to share their feedback is. So stay tuned on that. And then to close things out, you heard a lot about current conservation issues, advocacy opportunities. This is an important year for outdoor advocacy. And we'd love to hear how you'd like to engage in advocacy. So we're going to put another poll up, and feel free to select more than one option. But would you like to attend another conservation focused event? It could be either like this one, that's just more about like sharing information with you. It could be an opportunity to engage virtually or in person more with fellow mountaineers and strategize together about what you'd like to do together. It could be taking our Advocacy 101 e-learning course if you haven't already. That's a great way to learn about how you can take action in a number of different ways. You could also write and send a letter to the editor on an outdoor issue. And if you take the Advocacy 101 course, you'll learn some best practices for that. Or it could be other ways. And if you have some ideas, we'd love for you to share that in the chat. So let's see, we've got 80% participation so far, going towards 95%. So I think we can end the poll and share the results. But almost everyone wants to attend another event, so that's great. We'll definitely think about how to have more opportunities to engage you all. But again, share your ideas in the chat for how you'd like to engage. And with that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. Feel free to turn on your cameras if you'd like. I don't believe that we have any questions in the chat. We're going to share a copy of the slides. We're going to share a recap blog of this event. So you can share that with others. But yeah, any questions for us or any discussion that you all want to have?
I have one quick question. I've seen this through social media, et cetera, and tracking, but I'm not sure. It's a different push, I would say, like amongst the internet versus some of like public land sell-offs is the BLM. The changes to BLM. Can you speak a little bit about that and kind of where that you guys think that's going, and where that might need support, et cetera?
Yeah. So what Amy's referring to is the BLM's public lands rule, which the Bureau of Land Management is one of our federal public land managers, and Washington actually doesn't have much BLM land. It's mostly on Eastern Washington and not as important for mountaineers recreation as the Forest Service and the Park Service. And so the Mountaineers hasn't engaged as much as other organizations like Outdoor Alliance in the BLM issues in general, but also the public lands rule. But that's another important one to track. And if Connor could track down some Outdoor Alliance blog links on that, that would be great. But the public lands rule is essentially on BLM lands, putting conservation uses on par with more extractive uses of those lands. So allowing conservation leases for mitigation of more extractive uses and just bringing more balance to the way that BLM manages their lands. They're much more focused on extraction, like oil and gas, like mining than Forest Service and Park Service lands. And so that's certainly something we're supporting and is another issue to learn about if you're interested. We have a suggestion. It'd be great to have a presentation for half a meeting, use the other half to do an advocacy action together, right? Like write a letter. I'm more likely to get it done if scheduled. Love that idea. We can definitely do that. We've done that before. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm actually calling from Mexico while on vacation.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, I was just wondering, just in preparation for a possible sell-off of public lands, has Mountaineers thought about or done a prioritization list of lands, not because we want to see any sold off, but a prioritization of, those that are more valuable to us, more important than less, even though they're all important, just so that we're prepared to really seriously go to bat for ones that may be at the top of the list, is still fighting for all of them. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I think like what we did when we saw the acres of public lands that were proposed for sell-off is, our partner Outdoor Alliance, which the Mountaineers is a member of, we've been talking about a lot. They put out a great GIS map where you could zoom in, and maybe some or all of you saw that, where you could zoom in and see what's being proposed for sale. And so it was really easy to quickly go in and say, like, this trail, this important recreation area. But I think like my mental map is, one, I'm concerned about some of the lower elevation lands in Forest Service ownership. A lot of those are roadless areas right now, so they don't have the permanent protection of wilderness. But lower elevation, flatter lands on Forest Service lands could be prime targets for timber companies to purchase those places if they get put up for sale. So those are places that are kind of like top of my list for places that I'd be concerned about to be put up for sale. And then I think the other thing that I'm tracking is what we saw in the public lands sell-off proposal earlier this year from Senator Lee, was that anyone could propose a parcel and have that put up for sale and could bid on it. And so what could have happened is that, you know, a billionaire that wants to build a lakefront home on Baker Lake could put up a parcel for sale and build like their dream mansion on Baker Lake. And so you think about like, what are the beautiful areas where we like to recreate that people would like to put their McMansion on. So that's kind of like, those are my filters of what we would be most concerned about, because there's certainly we saw in the public land sell-offs, there were places proposed for sale that like realistically like probably would not get people bidding on, but there's other places that we would be like really concerned about. So thanks for the question. Amy.
Yeah, and I'll stop after this. Apologies. I tend to ask a lot of questions. But one other piece of legislation, again, or I don't want to say legislation, but one thing that's kind of been, again, circulating, not sure. I'm be curious for insight from you guys on like where this stands, where we stand, et cetera. Is that, I guess, where we stand, I think is less of an issue, is or less of a question, is I know Mike Lee also proposed a more recent policy around borderlands, and right, borderland security, and basically a way to get around wilderness so that we can put roads and things
Yeah.
to prevent people from entering the country within 100 miles of the border. I see that circulating, but I know from Outdoor Alliance perspective, there's not like a ton of directed action on that particular piece. Just curious on your guys' like insights on like where that stands, where we think that's going. Do we think that's going to be something like a future concern? Is it just not as a high priority, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks for flagging that, Amy. So that's a bill, it's talking about lands within 100 miles of a US border. So for us, we have quite a bit of federal public land that is within 100 miles of the Canadian border. So it's very much of concern. I think where we're at with that is we are tracking it super closely. And if it's going to come up to the committee, you know, we are certainly going to raise the alert. Right now, it seems to be more of a messaging bill than something that he actually wants to get done, but that could change. And so that's certainly something that we'll be, getting folks involved on if it's gonna start moving.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. It just makes me nervous, but I don't know what to do about it right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't see anything else in the chat.
Any more questions? Yeah, Jane, go ahead. You're muted, Jane.
Did you mean Michelle?
Yeah, no, I'm Jane.
Okay.
I'll let
Sorry,
Michelle,
I
Michelle
thought Jane-
can go right after me.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I'm fairly new to the Pacific Northwest. I am geographically challenged, but I love to hike. And it occurred to me as you were talking that it would be wonderful to have our hiking leaders sensitized that if they're going out, to offer hikes in particular areas, backpacking trips, scrambling, trail running, you name it, that there would be some, like a note, we have elevation, we have distance and whatever, and say something about sensitivity or that this is part of public lands and it's vulnerable. And if you see something on the trail, please report it, to Connor, whatever. So therefore, there's more of a tie-in between our going out and enjoying the trails and being aware that we might actually be useful in reporting, on the trail kinds of reports. I don't know how absurd that is. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah.
No, that's an awesome idea. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be kind of strategizing about how we can engage the hiking groups and kind of maybe institutionalize a process for that or encourage folks who want to do that. And so, yeah, that's an awesome idea, and I'd love to follow up about that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jane. We did share our recreation impact survey on the different summit group base camps for the different activities, but yeah, certainly more to do, more opportunity in the future. Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Michelle had a question.
Yeah, I was just curious. Another idea that came to me is we have a lot of youth, young people or even teenagers in our mountaineers or children of our mountaineers. I wonder, have you thought about doing some kind of a filming of them or a speak out of them where they're telling their own stories about how these places are important for them in the future, that how they love it and they need a long future of spending time in the same mountains that we've introduced them to from their perspective. And bringing that to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. That's great. Yeah, youth engagement and advocacy, that's definitely something that we continue to think about. We've engaged Mountaineers Youth Clubs from Seattle around different conservation and advocacy opportunities. We actually did publish a blog by a Seattle MAC member about in response to the agency workforce reductions, kind of highlighting the Alpine Lakes Wilderness and that individual's connection to that place through Mountaineers programs. So yeah, we definitely are looking for more opportunities to elevate youth voices, integrating youth into coalition lobby days at the state level is something that has happened before, and that we're also looking to do. Yeah, the youth question has certainly been raised with Outdoor Alliance and how to think about that in relation to the Grasstops Collective. So, but no, I'm so passionate about engaging our youth. You don't have to be a certain age to care about these places and to tell a compelling story. So thank you for that.
And this is a small thing as well. I will note, just for kind of information, is that at the fly-in in DC, one of the folks that came from the Washington cohort is out in District 4, and also Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance. And her kind of shtick, her big thing that she was communicating was that she's a teacher and that she's a mom, and that the impact she sees to kind of the youth from her angle. Again, small thing, right? One time in the scheme of everything, but just wanted to note that I think there's a lot of folks out there who would be interested in supporting that decision, or kind of like pushing that as well, because that was her big concern and what she was seeing.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Amy.
All right. Well, it's 1 o'clock, so we're going to bring this to a close. But thanks so much again for coming on, learning a little bit about current issues, what's going on, and being interested to advocate for the outdoors. And so thanks again. Make sure that you're on Conservation Currents. All of you probably are, but that's the best way to learn about these opportunities, future opportunities, and current issues, opportunities to advocate. So thanks again. Stay dry.